The original PlayStation wasn't just another gaming console, it was a revolution. For me, the PS1 was where my passion for gaming truly began. I still remember the first time I held that gray controller in my hands and powered on the system. It was a gateway to entire worlds I never knew could exist, introducing me to experiences that were far more immersive, emotional, and challenging than anything I'd played before. What made the PlayStation era so special wasn't just its groundbreaking 3D graphics or the iconic CD startup sound. It was how it redefined what gaming could be. Suddenly, games weren't just about fun mechanics. They were about cinematic storytelling, unforgettable characters, and creating a bond between player and console. The PlayStation didn't just shape the industry, it shaped me. I'll never forget booting up Final Fantasy VII and realizing that games could tell stories as compelling as movies, or experiencing the tension and fear of Resident Evil, knowing that every step forward could lead to a new scare. It wasn't just the technical leap forward, it was the fact that these games dared to be different, to push boundaries and take risks. In many ways, the PS1 defined gaming for an entire generation. It showed us what games could achieve, from jaw-dropping visual effects to deep, complex narratives. And for me, it set the stage for a lifelong love of this medium. Without the PlayStation, my view of gaming, and honestly of storytelling, wouldn't be the same. So let's take a look back at the top 20 PS1 games that helped define that generation, starting with some true classics that still stand tall today. At number 20, we have Xenogears, a game that stood out even in the PlayStation's golden era of RPGs. Released in 1998, it was a bold and ambitious project from Squaresoft that didn't just aim to tell a great story. It aimed to deliver a philosophical and psychological epic that went far deeper than the average game. Even today, it remains a cult classic beloved by fans for its complex narrative and unique approach to RPG mechanics. The first thing that strikes you about Xenogears is its story. It starts simply enough. Beifong Wang, a quiet young man, is caught up in a war he never wanted to fight. But as the game unfolds, it dives into themes of identity, religion, ethics, and the human condition. The sheer depth of the story, filled with twists, political intrigue, and existential questions, was unprecedented at the time. Gameplay-wise, Xenogears mixes traditional turn-based combat with an innovative combo system. You don't just select attack from a menu. You string together different button presses to perform powerful combos, making battles feel more dynamic and strategic. On top of that, the game features mechs, or gears, which add an entirely different layer to combat. Switching between on-foot and gear battles keeps the gameplay fresh and engaging. What really sticks with you, though, is the ambition. Xenogears attempted to create a narrative that felt as rich and layered as a novel. While it didn't have the polish of some of Squaresoft's other titles, its willingness to push boundaries helped it carve out a place in gaming history. Personally, I remember being captivated by its story, even if parts of it went over my head at the time. Xenogears isn't just a game, it's an experience, and that's why it kicks off our list at number 20. At number 19, we have Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, one of the most atmospheric and narrative-driven action-adventure games of the PS1 era. Released in 1999, it was a departure from the top-down gameplay of Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, instead delivering a fully 3D world where exploration, puzzle-solving, and combat were all woven into a richly detailed story of revenge, betrayal, and redemption. Even today, Soul Reaver's world-building and characters set it apart as one of the most memorable experiences from the PlayStation's golden age. You play as Raziel, a former vampire lieutenant betrayed by his master, Kain, and left to die. Revived as a soul-devouring wraith, Raziel sets out to destroy Kain and the rest of his former brethren, uncovering the dark secrets of Nosgoth along the way. What made Soul Reaver's story so compelling was its deep narrative, rich dialogue, and the relationship between Raziel and Kain, two tragic characters locked in a cycle of revenge and manipulation. The gameplay was equally groundbreaking. The ability to shift between the material and spectral realms was more than a gimmick. It was a core gameplay mechanic. Each realm had its own rules and puzzles, forcing players to think creatively. Add in smooth combat and an expansive open-ended world, and Soul Reaver felt far ahead of its time. The gothic art direction and haunting soundtrack also added layers of atmosphere, making Nosgoth a setting that felt truly alive, or undead, as the case may be. When I first played Soul Reaver, I was immediately hooked by Raziel's plight. The idea of hunting down your former allies, the twist-filled story, and the freedom to explore the world at my own pace left a lasting impression. Legacy of Kain's Soul Reaver wasn't just a game. It was a dark, twisted journey that I'll never forget. That's why it earns its place at number 19. At number 18, we've got one of the strangest and most unforgettable games on the PS1, Oddworld: Abe's Oddysee. This wasn't just a quirky platformer. It was a dystopian fever dream that introduced a world unlike anything else on the console. Released in 1997, it combined stealth gameplay, dark humor, and a weirdly emotional story to create something truly original. You play as Abe, a Mudokon slave who discovers that his employer, Rupture Farms, is planning to turn him and his co-workers into meat products. That revelation kicks off a dangerous escape mission where Abe becomes an unlikely hero, using stealth, chanting powers, and quick thinking to outsmart guards, dodge traps, and rescue his fellow workers. What set this game apart was the tone. One moment bleak and oppressive, the next moment genuinely funny. Abe's clumsy movements and innocent voice gave him personality, while the world around him was full of brutal machinery, horrifying creatures, and bizarre alien landscapes. It wasn't just a platformer, it was a commentary on greed, industry, and survival. The cinematic cutscenes and pre-rendered environments gave it a film-like quality, while the haunting soundtrack amplified the tension at every turn. It felt like playing through an animated dystopian movie, something risky, dark, and unlike anything else at the time. Abe's Oddysee was brutally challenging, but that's part of why it stuck with people. Every success felt earned. Every Mudokon saved felt like a win. It's a cult classic for a reason, and it kicks off our countdown at number 18. At number 17, we're stepping into the ring with one of the greatest 2D fighters to ever grace the PlayStation, Street Fighter Alpha 3. Released in 1998, this game wasn't just a refinement of the franchise, it was a full-blown evolution. It added depth, variety, and customization in ways that made it a fan favorite for casuals and competitive players alike. What really made Alpha 3 shine was its introduction of the isms. You had A-ism, which gave you access to multiple super combos. X-ism, a nod to the old-school Street Fighter II with single powerful supers. And V-ism, which let you build custom combos and go wild. This let players tailor the experience to match their playstyle, and it made every match feel fresh. The character roster was massive for the time, over 30 fighters including series staples like Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, and more obscure characters like Kain and Cody. Each one felt distinct, and the balance between accessibility and skill mastery made this game endlessly replayable. The visuals were sharp, the animations were smooth, and the soundtrack? Absolute fire. From high-energy menu music to intense battle themes, every match felt like a tournament highlight reel. Whether you were grinding through arcade mode, trash-talking friends in Versus, or mastering your custom combos, Alpha 3 delivered. It brought arcade energy to the home console in a way that few fighters had before, and it still holds up today. That's why it punches in at number 17 on our list. At number 16, we've got one of the most ambitious and genre-blending games of the PS1 era, Parasite Eve. Released in 1998 by Squaresoft, this wasn't your typical RPG. It was a mix of science fiction, survival horror, and cinematic storytelling set in a gritty, modern-day New York City, and it nailed the tone perfectly. You play as Aya Brea, a rookie NYPD officer who witnesses a terrifying event during an opera. Audience members bursting into flames without warning. From there, she's pulled into a horrifying biological mystery involving mutated creatures, a rogue entity named Eve, and her own mysterious connection to the chaos. Combat was a standout feature. It wasn't turn-based in the traditional sense. You could move around in real time, dodging attacks while waiting for your action meter to fill. Choosing the right abilities, timing your shots, and managing your energy gave battles a constant sense of tension. You were never just mashing buttons. You were thinking, reacting, and adapting. Visually, it was stunning. Pre-rendered backgrounds gave New York an eerie apocalyptic feel, and the character designs were detailed and expressive. The soundtrack by Yoko Shimomura was haunting, mixing classical elegance with sci-fi dread. For me, Parasite Eve was unforgettable. It wasn't afraid to be weird, mature, and different. It tackled themes of identity, science, and human evolution in ways that stuck with me for years. It wasn't just a game, it was an experience. And that's why it earns its spot at number 16. At number 15, we have Suikoden II, one of the most beloved JRPGs on the PlayStation, often considered a hidden gem of its era. Released in 1999, it might not have had the flashy visuals or blockbuster marketing of some of its contemporaries, but it delivered something far more valuable: a deep, complex story, a vast cast of characters, and a rich, living world that has left a lasting impression on players. Even today, Suikoden II stands as a testament to the power of storytelling in games. Set in a world of political intrigue, war, and personal betrayal, Suikoden II follows the story of Ryu, a young soldier caught in the midst of a civil war. What starts as a personal journey soon unfolds into a grand tale of alliances, rebellion, and the pursuit of peace. The game's ability to weave personal stories with larger political events gives it a level of depth that few games from the time could match. One of the most impressive features of Suikoden II is its cast of 108 recruitable characters. Each character, no matter how small, adds something unique to the world, whether it's a compelling backstory, a critical skill in combat, or simply a piece of dialogue that enriches the world building. Finding and recruiting these characters becomes an addictive quest on its own, rewarding players for exploration and careful decision-making. The combat system also stands out. The game features classic turn-based battles, large-scale war confrontations, and even one-on-one duels. This variety ensures that the gameplay never becomes stale. Combine that with a beautiful, emotive soundtrack, and you have an RPG experience that's unforgettable. For me, Suikoden II was a revelation. It proved that a game didn't need state-of-the-art graphics or a huge marketing campaign to be truly great. It just needed heart, depth, and a world that felt real. That's why it earns the number 15 spot on our list. At number 14, we have Chrono Cross, the ambitious successor to the legendary Chrono Trigger. Released in 2000, this game took the PlayStation's RPG library to new heights with its complex narrative, beautiful visuals, and unforgettable soundtrack. While it diverged from its predecessor's structure and tone, Chrono Cross remains one of the most captivating and unique JRPGs of its time. Chrono Cross's story is one of its most debated and celebrated features. The game follows Surge, a boy who stumbles into a parallel dimension where he died years ago. From there, the narrative spirals into a multi-dimensional epic filled with twists, morally gray decisions, and a deep exploration of identity, fate, and the interconnectedness of worlds. While some fans found the story's complexity overwhelming, others loved the challenge of piecing together its intricate web of relationships and events. The game's combat system set it apart from most JRPGs of the era. Rather than traditional turn-based battles, Chrono Cross used a stamina-based system that allowed players to chain together attacks, skills, and powerful summoning elements. It felt fast-paced and strategic, especially when combined with the game's element grid system, where every move influenced the field's elemental properties. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of Chrono Cross is its soundtrack. Composed by the legendary Yasunori Mitsuda, the game's music is widely regarded as one of the greatest video game soundtracks ever created. Tracks like Scars of Time and Radical Dreamers still evoke powerful emotions today, pulling players back into that world the moment they hear the opening notes. For me, Chrono Cross was a game that made me rethink how stories could be told in a game. It wasn't just a series of battles and cutscenes. It was a revelation of interconnected lives and worlds, told through a lens that felt both mysterious and deeply human. That's why it earns its place at number 14. At number 13, we have Vagrant Story, one of the most boldly original RPGs of the PlayStation era. Released in 2000 by Square, it forewent typical JRPG conventions and introduced a dark, mature narrative set in the grim kingdom of Valendia, where political intrigue, religious conspiracies, and personal vendettas collide. Even today, it's known as a cult classic that pushed boundaries and remains a must-play for fans of RPGs. You play as Ashley Riot, an elite agent of the Valendia Knights of the Peace, who is dispatched to infiltrate the city of Liamond and track down a notorious cult leader. What starts as a simple mission spirals into a deeper mystery filled with betrayals, ancient curses, and revelations about Ashley's own past. The storytelling is mature and layered, delivered through cinematic cutscenes and dialogue that feels ahead of its time. Vagrant Story's combat system is what truly sets it apart. The game introduced a targeting mechanic that allowed players to pinpoint specific enemy body parts, turning every encounter into a strategic affair. Pair that with its deep crafting system, weapon affinities, and risk mechanics, and you have an RPG that demands careful planning and rewards mastery. Visually, Vagrant Story's atmospheric environments and detailed character models were stunning for the PS1, and the haunting soundtrack perfectly complemented the game's moody tone. When I first played Vagrant Story, I was struck by how different it felt. It wasn't about saving the world or collecting crystals. It was about uncovering a dark, personal story and navigating complex gameplay systems that made every victory feel earned. That's why it sits at number 13 on our list. Quick pause before we hit the next game. If you're still watching, you're either really into PlayStation nostalgia or trying to find that one game you rented from Blockbuster and forgot the name of. Either way, let me know in the comments what your favorite PS1 memory is. I read every single one. And yes, rage-quitting Tekken 3 counts. At number 12, we have Final Fantasy IX, the PlayStation's farewell love letter to traditional RPGs. Released in 2000, this was the 9th main installment in the series, but instead of continuing the futuristic and modern aesthetic of 7 and 8, 9 returned to its fantasy roots, delivering a world filled with castles, airships, and charming characters that felt like they were plucked straight from a storybook. The story centers on Zidane Tribal, a carefree thief who becomes entangled in a grand adventure involving a kidnapped princess, a terrifying war, and the mysteries of existence itself. The game's colorful cast, including Princess Garnet, the stoic Steiner, and the lovable black mage Vivi, forms one of the most memorable party lineups in the series. Each character's personal journey adds depth to the game's lighthearted and whimsical tone, making the story feel both nostalgic and emotionally impactful. Final Fantasy IX's gameplay also embraced classic RPG mechanics. The active time battle system returned with a few refinements, and the game introduced the ability system, which let characters learn skills from their equipment. This encouraged careful planning and made every piece of gear feel meaningful. Visually, the game was one of the most beautiful on the PS1, with rich, pre-rendered backgrounds, detailed character models, and breathtaking cinematic cutscenes. Nobuo Uematsu's score is another standout, with tracks like Melodies of Life and the world map theme evoking a profound sense of nostalgia. For me, Final Fantasy IX felt like a return to what made RPGs magical in the first place. It's a classic adventure with heart, humor, and a timeless charm, earning its place at number 12 on our list. Coming in at number 11, we have Silent Hill, a game that redefined the survival horror genre by leaning heavily into psychological terror and atmosphere. Released in 1999, Silent Hill offered players a much more subtle and unsettling horror experience compared to its peers. It remains one of the most hauntingly memorable games of the PS1 era and continues to influence the genre to this day. You step into the shoes of Harry Mason, a father searching for his missing daughter in the fog-enshrouded town of Silent Hill. What starts as a simple search turns into a descent into madness, as Harry uncovers disturbing cult activity, encounters grotesque monsters, and navigates the warped reality of this cursed town. Silent Hill's story was fragmented and layered, leaving much of its terror up to the player's imagination and interpretation, making it all the more chilling. What set Silent Hill apart was its atmosphere and pacing. The dense fog that limited visibility wasn't just a technical limitation. It became a core element of the game's tension. The eerie, often industrial soundtrack by Akira Yamaoka enhanced the unease, as did the radio that emitted static whenever something horrifying was nearby. Instead of jumping out to scare you, Silent Hill relied on slowly building dread, leaving you on edge long before anything actually appeared. I'll never forget my first encounter with Silent Hill's world. Walking through that endless fog, hearing strange noises, and knowing something was out there, it was a feeling unlike any other. That sense of helplessness and mystery made every step forward feel like a risk. Even today, Silent Hill's psychological horror and atmospheric storytelling make it a standout. Its impact on survival horror and gaming as a whole is undeniable, and that's why it earns its place at number 11. At number 10, we have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, a game that took everything amazing about the original and pushed it to the next level. Released in 2000, this game wasn't just a skateboarding title. It was a cultural phenomenon, blending addictive gameplay with a legendary soundtrack that captured the spirit of an entire generation. Even today, THPS 2 remains one of the most beloved sports games of all time. Building on the groundbreaking mechanics of the first game, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 introduced manuals, a game-changing feature that allowed players to link tricks together for longer and more satisfying combos. The addition of a Create-a-Skater mode and Park Editor gave players more freedom and creativity, letting them customize their experience in ways that felt fresh and innovative. The level design was another standout. Maps like the School 2 and the Hangar became instant classics, offering countless opportunities to pull off huge combos and explore every hidden nook. Each level was a playground where every rail, ramp, and gap felt perfectly placed for experimentation and mastery. When I first played THPS2, I couldn't put it down. The freedom of movement, the satisfaction of nailing the perfect combo, and the pure fun of exploring the levels made it one of those rare games that never got old. It's no wonder that even now, in 2025, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is still celebrated as one of the greatest games ever. That's why it earns its place at number 10 on our list. At number 9, we have Spyro the Dragon, a game that perfectly captured the magic of 3D platforming during the PlayStation era. Released in 1998 by Insomniac Games, it introduced players to a vibrant world filled with charm, humor, and satisfying exploration. For many, Spyro wasn't just a game. It was a gateway into a world of whimsical adventures and colorful characters. You play as Spyro, a young feisty dragon tasked with freeing his fellow dragons who've been turned into stone by the villainous Nasty Nork. Along the way, you glide through expansive levels, collect gems, defeat quirky enemies, and rescue dragons with their own unique personalities. The game's story may have been straightforward, but its execution was what made it special. Spyro's sassy attitude, paired with the humor and charm of the NPCs, kept players smiling from start to finish. What truly made Spyro stand out was its level design and controls. The game's wide-open areas encouraged players to explore every nook and cranny, while the responsive controls made gliding, charging, and flaming enemies feel intuitive and fun. The result was a platformer that rewarded curiosity, allowing players to approach challenges at their own pace. The visuals were another highlight. Bright, vibrant environments and smooth character animations made the world of Spyro feel alive. Personally, I'll never forget the joy of soaring through the skies, searching for every hidden gem and dragon statue. Spyro the Dragon wasn't just about beating levels. It was about enjoying the ride, taking in the colorful landscapes, and finding every little secret the developers had tucked away. Even in 2025, it remains a delightful, timeless adventure, earning its spot at number 9. At number 8, we have Crash Bandicoot, the game that put Naughty Dog and Sony's PlayStation firmly on the map. Released in 1996, Crash Bandicoot was a bold leap forward for 3D platforming, delivering challenging levels, vibrant visuals, and a lovable mascot who quickly became synonymous with the PlayStation brand. Even in 2025, this game still stands out as a must-play classic. You play as Crash, a genetically altered bandicoot created by the evil Dr. Neo Cortex. After escaping Cortex's experiments, Crash must traverse the dangerous islands, rescue his girlfriend Tawna, and stop Cortex's plans. The story was simple, but it served as a perfect backdrop for the game's focus: pure, precise platforming action. What set Crash Bandicoot apart was its unique level structure. Instead of fully open worlds, the game offered a series of linear challenging stages with a forward-facing camera. This gave it a distinctive feel, requiring players to time their jumps, spins, and enemy encounters with pinpoint accuracy. The variety of environments, from lush jungles to icy caverns and crumbling ruins, kept the experience fresh and engaging. The game's visuals were another standout. Using cutting-edge techniques at the time, Naughty Dog created lush, colorful environments and expressive character animations that made Crash an instant icon. Paired with a catchy, upbeat soundtrack, the game had a cheerful, playful tone that appealed to a wide audience. Crash Bandicoot was one of the first games that made me rage quit and immediately come back for more. Its difficulty was tough but fair, and every time I finally completed a level, it felt like a triumph. Even decades later, Crash Bandicoot's combination of charm, challenge, and creativity earns it a spot at number 8. At number 7, we have Tekken 3, a game that wasn't just one of the best fighting games of its time. It was a defining moment for the genre. Released in 1998, Tekken 3 raised the bar for what a fighting game could be. It delivered fluid, intuitive combat, a diverse roster of memorable characters, and an addictive pick-up-and-play appeal that made it a staple at both arcades and home consoles. Even now, it remains one of the most beloved fighting games ever made. What set Tekken 3 apart was its accessibility and depth. On the surface, it was easy to jump in and start mashing buttons, pulling off satisfying punches, kicks, and combos. But beneath that surface lay a deep combat system that rewarded players who took the time to learn move sets, timing, and character strategies. Veterans could master intricate juggle combos, sidesteps, and punishing counters, while newcomers could still have a blast figuring out their favorite fighter. Speaking of fighters, Tekken 3's roster was iconic. Characters like Jin Kazama, Warang, and Ling Xiaoyu made their debuts here, becoming instant fan favorites. Alongside series veterans like Paul Phoenix and Nina Williams, this lineup felt fresh and balanced. Each character had their own distinct style, making every matchup exciting and unpredictable. Beyond the core one-on-one battles, Tekken 3 offered fun extra modes that gave the game even more replay value. Tekken Force introduced a beat-em-up element, while Tekken Ball turned fighting into a volleyball-like game that was surprisingly addictive. These modes helped Tekken 3 stand out, giving players more reasons to keep coming back. I remember countless hours spent battling friends in Tekken 3, the excitement of a perfectly timed counter, the rush of a last-second victory, and the joy of discovering new combos. It wasn't just a game, it was a shared experience that made every weekend a tournament. That's why Tekken 3 earns its place at number 7. At number 6, we have Tomb Raider, a game that redefined the action-adventure genre and introduced us to one of gaming's most enduring icons, Lara Croft. Released in 1996, Tomb Raider was groundbreaking at the time. It combined platforming, puzzles, and third-person exploration into a cohesive package that felt like playing through a Hollywood blockbuster. Its mix of challenging gameplay, memorable environments, and a daring female lead was revolutionary, and it remains a classic that helped define the PlayStation's identity. Playing as Lara Croft, you explored sprawling, mysterious levels packed with ancient tombs, deadly traps, and wild animals. Each stage was a puzzle in itself, requiring careful thought, precision jumps, and the occasional gunfight. The controls demanded precision, making each successful leap and every solved puzzle feel deeply satisfying. Tomb Raider's levels weren't just linear pathways. They were open, multi-tiered environments that encouraged exploration and rewarded curiosity. What made Tomb Raider unforgettable was its sense of adventure and atmosphere. The game took players to exotic locations, from the Peruvian Andes to the Lost Valley, where you'd encounter dinosaurs amidst ancient ruins. The sense of isolation and discovery was unmatched at the time. The haunting, minimal soundtrack set the tone perfectly, letting the environment itself become the star of the show. For me, Tomb Raider was the first game that truly felt like an adventure movie come to life. I remember feeling the tension as I solved intricate puzzles or narrowly dodged a collapsing ceiling. It wasn't just about beating the game, it was about experiencing the thrill of exploration, discovery, and survival. Even in 2025, Tomb Raider's legacy remains strong. Its innovative gameplay, cinematic presentation, and iconic protagonist ensure its place as one of the greatest PlayStation games of all time, earning it the number 6 spot on our list. We're in the top 5 now, and at number 5, we have Gran Turismo II, a game that revolutionized the racing genre and set the gold standard for driving simulations. Released in 1999, this game built on the success of the original Gran Turismo, offering more cars, more tracks, and even greater realism. It wasn't just a racing game, it was a celebration of automotive culture, and it paved the way for nearly every modern racing sim. With over 600 cars and a wide range of real-world and fantasy tracks, Gran Turismo 2 provided an unprecedented level of variety. Each car handled differently, and every track had its own quirks, making every race feel unique. The addition of rally racing further expanded the game's scope, giving players new challenges and terrain to master. The game's progression system was also ahead of its time. Rather than just completing races, you earned licenses, bought cars, upgraded them, and carefully tuned their performance. This wasn't just about going fast, it was about strategy, precision, and building your dream garage. That attention to detail helped Gran Turismo 2 become one of the most immersive racing experiences on the PlayStation. I'll never forget the first time I completed my license tests and bought my first car. The satisfaction of improving my lap times, unlocking new vehicles, and tackling tougher races kept me hooked for countless hours. Even today, Gran Turismo II's attention to detail and love for cars make it a standout in the series and one of the most impactful racing games ever created. That's why it's firmly in our top 5. Coming in at number 4 in the top 5, we have Castlevania Symphony of the Night, a game that reshaped the Castlevania series and helped define the Metroidvania genre. Released in 1997, it wasn't just another entry in the series. It was a bold evolution that abandoned the linear stage-based structure of its predecessors in favor of a sprawling, interconnected castle. Even decades later, Symphony of the Night remains one of the most celebrated 2D action-adventure games ever made. You play as Alucard, the son of Dracula, on a mission to stop his father's evil reign. But rather than simply progressing level by level, you explore a massive castle filled with hidden rooms, secret paths, and powerful items. The game's focus on non-linear exploration and character progression was groundbreaking. You gained new abilities, found better equipment, and slowly unlocked more of the castle as you played, creating a deeply rewarding sense of discovery and progression. The game's visuals and music were equally stunning. The Gothic art direction gave every room and corridor a distinct, haunting atmosphere, while Michiru Yamane's legendary soundtrack elevated every moment, from epic boss battles to quiet exploration. For me, Symphony of the Night was a revelation. It wasn't just the freedom of exploration that impressed me. It was the way the game rewarded curiosity and careful observation. Every new ability felt like a key unlocking a treasure trove of secrets, and that sense of wonder never faded. Even now, Symphony of the Night is considered one of the best-designed games of all time. Its impact on the industry is undeniable, and that's why it earns its spot at number 4. At number 3, we have Resident Evil, the game that defined the survival horror genre and introduced players to the tension-filled world of the Spencer Mansion. Released in 1996, this was a groundbreaking experience that combined puzzles, exploration, and limited resources to create a constant sense of fear and dread. Even now, it's hard to overstate the influence of Resident Evil on both gaming and pop culture. You play as either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, members of the Elite Stars unit, who are sent to investigate a series of bizarre murders. What you find is a twisted conspiracy involving a secret laboratory, the Umbrella Corporation, and a deadly biological weapon. The story might seem straightforward now, but at the time it felt like playing through a B-horror movie brought to life, complete with eerie cutscenes and iconic lines like, "You were almost a Jill sandwich." The game's fixed camera angles and tank controls added to the tension, forcing you to make every move carefully. Ammo was scarce, healing items were limited, and the sense of vulnerability was ever present. Puzzles broke up the action, often requiring backtracking and careful observation of your environment. The sound design was another key element. The distant groans of zombies, the creak of doors, and the chilling soundtrack kept you on edge the entire time. Playing Resident Evil for the first time was unforgettable. The fear of rounding a corner and running into a zombie, the panic of realizing I was out of ammo, and the satisfaction of solving a tough puzzle all contributed to an experience that was truly groundbreaking. Resident Evil didn't just create a genre. It created an enduring legacy that remains influential to this day. That's why it earns its place at number 3. Coming in at number 2, we have Metal Gear Solid, a game that didn't just push the boundaries of what a PlayStation game could be. It changed the way we think about storytelling in video games. Released in 1998, Hideo Kojima's masterpiece redefined the stealth genre, blending cutting-edge gameplay with a cinematic narrative that set a new standard for interactive storytelling. Even today, Metal Gear Solid remains one of the most iconic and influential games of all time. The story follows Solid Snake, a legendary soldier pulled out of retirement to infiltrate a heavily guarded nuclear weapons facility, stop a group of rogue agents, and confront his past. What made the game stand out wasn't just its complex plot, or the way it wove politics, genetics, and personal drama together. It was the way it presented that story. Fully voiced cutscenes, intricate dialogue, and memorable characters like Revolver Ocelot, Gray Fox, and Sniper Wolf made it feel like playing through a blockbuster movie. Metal Gear Solid's gameplay was equally revolutionary. Rather than running in guns blazing, you were encouraged to sneak, distract guards, and use stealth to outsmart your enemies. The tight level design and clever use of the environment added layers of strategy that felt fresh and exciting. Boss fights were another highlight. Each one was unique, forcing you to think creatively and adapt your tactics. Encounters like the legendary battle against Psycho Mantis showcased Kojima's knack for breaking the fourth wall and surprising players at every turn. When I first played Metal Gear Solid, I was blown away. It felt like nothing I'd ever experienced before. The tense stealth mechanics, the deeply human story, and the innovative gameplay made every moment unforgettable. That's why Metal Gear Solid earns its spot at number 2. The game that has made the very top of our list, taking the number 1 spot, is Final Fantasy VII. The game that didn't just define an era, it redefined what video games could be. Released in 1997, this groundbreaking RPG elevated the medium to a new level, delivering an epic story, unforgettable characters, and a sprawling world that felt alive. For many, Final Fantasy VII wasn't just a game, it was a cultural phenomenon. The story follows Cloud Strife, a former soldier turned mercenary, who becomes entangled with a ragtag group of eco-warriors fighting against the oppressive Shinra Corporation. But what begins as a struggle to save the planet soon evolves into a personal journey of identity, loss, and redemption. As Cloud faces his own past, confronts the legendary villain Sephiroth, and discovers the truth about the planet's fate, players are pulled into a narrative that's both intimate and epic. Final Fantasy VII's gameplay combined traditional turn-based combat with innovative mechanics like the Materia system, which gave players endless flexibility in customizing their characters' abilities. Exploration felt rewarding, with hidden areas, side quests, and optional bosses that added depth and replayability. The blend of pre-rendered backgrounds and full-motion video cutscenes was a technical marvel at the time, creating moments that felt truly cinematic. Personally, Final Fantasy VII was my introduction to grand emotional storytelling in games. The characters felt real, the world felt vast, and the stakes felt personal. It showed me that video games could deliver the kind of emotional impact usually reserved for books or films. Decades later, it still holds that same power. Final Fantasy VII isn't just the best PS1 game. It's a masterpiece that set the stage for modern gaming as we know it. That's why it takes the top spot at number 1. And that's our list of the 20 greatest PS1 games of all time. The original PlayStation wasn't just a console, it was a revolution. It changed the gaming landscape forever, pushing boundaries with its 3D graphics, CD-quality sound, and massive library of unforgettable titles. When the PlayStation launched in 1994, it didn't just compete with other consoles, it redefined what gaming could be. It introduced us to immersive worlds, cinematic storytelling, and bold new ideas that went beyond simple entertainment. Developers took risks and embraced the new technology, creating experiences that felt fresh, exciting, and most importantly, memorable. The PS1 wasn't just a console, it was a cultural movement that turned gaming into a mainstream phenomenon. The PlayStation 1's impact on the world of gaming was profound. It set the stage for modern game design, from the birth of full-fledged 3D adventures to the evolution of genres like survival horror, stealth, and JRPGs. Characters like Lara Croft, Cloud Strife, and Solid Snake became household names, while franchises like Final Fantasy, Metal Gear, and Resident Evil rose to legendary status. Even today, the echoes of the PS1 era can be felt in the games we play, the stories we experience, and the way we connect with gaming as a medium. But perhaps its greatest legacy is what it meant to gamers. For many of us, the PS1 was more than just a machine. It was our gateway into a world of imagination and creativity. It taught us to dream bigger, to explore further, and to believe that gaming could be so much more than we ever thought possible. And that's a legacy that will never fade. Which PS1 game meant the most to you? Drop it in the comments. I want to see what everyone else grew up playing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.